Hello everyone, welcome back to the Watchalong with LSI. The Abu Dhabi qualifying session is on its way, the final qualifying session of the year. Let's get going, let's enjoy it. Alright, currently we've got a few cars out on track. Those are the Aston Martins and the Mercedes. Alonso, however, goes straight back in and doesn't set a lap in the end. It currently says that that's a hard tyre for Russell, Hamilton, and it was for Alonso. I'm not entirely sure how true that is, because it would be a little bit confusing, but Stroll is on that soft tyre. Now we are later in to the evening track time. As you can see, 6 o'clock it is in Abu Dhabi. It does mean that the track temperatures are colder and more close to what we will be seeing tomorrow as well, and I assume we'll be able to see the cars go a lot quicker. We did beat the pole time in FP3 earlier on, the pole time from last year. Now we're looking to absolutely smash that if we can, and I think it will be quite straightforward to do so. So it's time will tell. We did a 23.433 with Oscar Piastri in FP3 just earlier on. Qualifying last year was a 23.445 with Max Verstappen, who is looking to try and get another good performance in if they possibly can. They are the man to compete around the circuit. Incredibly good. Lewis Hamilton, of course, is the most successful, but he's got a bit more time in the sport. So would you argue that Max Verstappen owns this circuit? Who will take pole position? According to the votes, it's an even tie between Norris, Sainz and Piastri. Who will win the Constructors' Championship? It is 85% to 15% for McLaren. And then who will be the fastest? It is McLaren, then Red Bull, then Ferrari once again. And looking at the details that we saw earlier on, that might not actually be that far from the truth. We were pretty convinced that Ferrari would be competing up at the front, and they were confident that they'd be able to do quite well this weekend, but it just didn't quite come together in the practice session. Practice is too early to call the pace of the cars, but it still is gonna definitely give a bit of a view of what's to come later on, and that is what we've got right now. And now we do get our first lap set with Lance Stroll. We're waiting for a few more cars to come around the circuit. We've got only a couple people in the pit lane. That is both Mercedes and that is Alonso as well. Other than that, everybody is currently out on track, ready to go for the rest of this session. And it's a busy one. It's going to be a bit packed in the last sector towards the end of this session. We've still got over 10 minutes on the clock right now. Lance Stroll still holds that top time, and we're yet to see anybody complete a lap. Looking at the next driver to complete a lap, it will be Sergio Perez, who is currently fastest of all in that first sector, faster than Colapinto by 2/10. And then we see Alex Albon go very close to Sergio Perez's first sector. They're currently sitting P4 on the graphic at least, but that will change very, very soon, I am sure, when everybody does come through. And I think they're on cue to probably beat Lance Stroll's current time. Verstappen is starting a lap. We'll see what they can do in the first sector, but still it goes to Sergio Perez, who makes it a purple middle sector as well. They come around the penultimate corner and into the final turn. It will be P16, or turn 16 I should say. It's P4 and it's going to go to P1 as expected. Verstappen has just taken purple in that middle sector. Albon has actually improved over Sergio Perez's middle sector by 1/1000th of a second. Not going to be a massive difference, of course, but Verstappen is going to be looking to try and take that away immediately if they can do so. That is Perez having their time deleted immediately. Unfortunately, they're going to go down the order, and that is not what you want to see. Alex Albon up to P1 instead of Sergio Perez. But it's going to be about Max Verstappen, surely, who will set that pace. They pass the Alpine. They get to the second Alpine of Jack Doohan. Will they have traffic or will they be absolutely fine? This is one of the first things that Jack Doohan will be new to, as they have to experience traffic. They're going to start their lap quite early and not impede Max at all, although they may have had some turbulent air. They come out the final corner, no DRS, but it's going to be pole position. It's not purple in the final sector there, but it is half a second ahead of Tsunoda, who just beat Albon, and Zhou goes and takes that over the Williams driver as well. Purple first sector for Piastri to take it away from the Red Bull. Leclerc goes to P2, still 2 tenths away from Max Verstappen, and that is not what we were expecting. We were expecting that Ferrari to be probably a clear second and give the McLarens a good fight, but it doesn't seem to be that way, at least for Charles Leclerc, as Carlos Sainz has completely taken away what I was just going to say and has gone just under half a tenth faster than Max Verstappen in that P1 spot. Bottas beats his teammate Zhou Guanyu down to 6th place, 1 tenth away for him from his teammate. Lawson was in P7. We still see Piastri complete their lap, but it's actually Lando Norris who's going to complete it first. Magnussen goes purple in the middle sector, believe it or not Lando Norris. Lando has only gone green to set their first lap, of course, but Piastri is going to be looking to try and go a little bit quicker. That is now Magnussen to P3 with a brilliant lap. Norris only P4, but Oscar Piastri at the final corner. Is that first sector going to be enough to get them towards the top of the times, or are they not going to get there? They're not. They beat their teammate, but Kevin Magnussen has got themselves into P3 with 8 minutes on the clock. Verstappen and Sainz lead the way, and they've got a bit of a margin at the moment. Charles Leclerc just struggling a lot. They have got a new battery in that car, so they will have a 10-place grid penalty. They need to make sure that they dial things in, but it seems like their weekend so far, just for them, maybe hasn't gone to plan, as Carlos Sainz has managed to set a pretty decent lap time. We've still got plenty to go in this session, so don't count anything out. We've actually had Colapinto have a time deleted of 24.411 in the end. Turn 1 track limit extension, that was the same for Sergio Perez, very easily done, as you can do so in the F1 game, as what many of us have experience with. It's super easy to do that, and there is a bit of a chunky curb on the exit as well that you've got to be careful with. Russell up to P8 only. Obviously the bottom 5 get knocked out. It's not Q2 or the bottom 10, so they should be somewhat, well, if they were to finish the session in that position, they'd be more than safe. But there's going to be some track evolution. There's a little bit more time for them to go in and out of the pit lane to go for one final run. Lance Stroll to P8 with a purple middle sector. Looking at P1 to P8, it's a pretty close pack right there. 2.5 tenths it has between the top 8 drivers. That's something... 2.5 tenths would be the gap between like P1 and P2 or P1 and P3 back in 2018, 2019. But these days, it is definitely much different. It is very good indeed. Perez seems to have maybe a little bit of an issue. They're asking their engineers if they have, I don't know if it was some damage or something on the car. But they're currently down in P19 with no lap time in the drop zone, so is Colapinto. Alex Albon is at the back. They have set that at a lap time. They're out again to try and get themselves out of Q1. As they've done so many times this season, but they do have a little bit of work to do. Now, Carlos Sainz still holds that time. We've got Albon, Colapinto, Russell, Hamilton, Stroll all out on circuit, but Russell goes into the pit lane. To net set a lap time, it will be Alex Albon. I believe Colapinto actually will be before them. Hamilton expected to go into the pit lane as they do so. It's the Williams having the clear track at the moment. There will probably be a car or two on their way out of the pit lane. As you can see, it's not Stroll, it's, I thought there was some movement, but I think they're just actually sitting in the garage. So it might be that the Williams get a completely clear track as they run the same kind of pit exit simulation, I guess. I'm trying to find the words for that. They go out at exactly the same time. It's what you see with most teams. They allow both of their cars to go out at a very similar time. We've got a few cars, no, not a few cars moving out. I thought they were all moving out together, but it's actually just a gap where the Williams pit garage is. Colapinto starts their next lap, and Alex Albon will shortly do so immediately after, and this will be a clear run for them. They will not have any traffic at all, so they do not have any excuses to make a mistake. It will be all good. Alex Albon, of course, is slightly behind his teammate at the moment, but they shouldn't really be affected by any problems. Into 5, Colapinto goes, currently improving, both of them on their first sector, but half a tenth down, more or less, over half a tenth is Colapinto to his teammate. He needs to find a bit more here if he wants to be competitive. Through Sector 2, Colapinto, 36.140. Alex Albon not improving, but they are still faster than their teammates. So that's an interesting one. Alex still looking to go faster than their previous lap time. I assume so, according to their middle sector. Colapinto has got a couple more corners to go. 1 and 2. There you go. 16 and across the line. What's it going to be for the Argentine? Will they be able to get themselves out of Q1 for now? P11. Alex Albon looking to beat that to P10. Would that be safe enough? 3 minutes on the clock. They would have to go for a cool down lap and a prep lap and then go again if they do want to set one more lap, but they're not going to have time to go into the pit lane and come back out. Lots of people on their way out of the pit lane now. We've only got a few. There's 2 Mercedes who are the only cars that are currently sat in the pit lane. Everybody else is making their way out on track, and it is going to be a packed circuit. Track evolution will come into play. We're going to get lots of cars trying to find their way out. Jack Doohan is trying to get himself out of the first part of qualifying on his debut weekend. The Saubers with good form in the last couple of races, trying to get at least one of their cars into the second part of qualifying, as they have done so in the last 2 Grand Prix. I think Bottas got themselves out of Las Vegas Q1, and I think Zhou and Bottas got themselves out of Qatar Q1, unless I'm mixing myself up with the sprint qualifying. That could be possible. Regardless, they've been doing a pretty decent job in the later stage of this session. We've got a momentary graphic error there with Verstappen and Magnussen, but we should be absolutely fine. There shouldn't be any problems, and we'll get to see Zhou Guanyu improving first for everyone. That's at least what we're expecting. Colapinto and Alex Albon on slow down laps. It's actually an in-lap and a pit lap there for Colapinto and Albon. So Williams are banking on their laps to get them through the session, and looking at the gaps, that's probably not going to be enough. I'd be very surprised if both of them were able to actually make it through into the second part of qualifying with the laps that they have set. Maybe they're not hopeful and they're just going to give it in and let things be. They do not want to have any more crash damage in this season. They're just going to have to hope that that's enough and something else happens for the cars behind. Zhou Guanyu is into the final sector now. They've got no traffic ahead. Piastri shouldn't be blocking them, although they are going pretty slowly, so they will meet them on the exit of 14 and they will go into 15. The 2 Alpine Academy drivers from their former academies, of course. But out the final corner, and it's going to be Zhou Guanyu. So P12, they push down Colapinto, and that is not looking good for Colapinto. Charles Leclerc currently going purple. Norris has taken that away immediately, and Valtteri Bottas has gone to P1. And I said the Saubers are having a pretty decent job in recent times. That is an awesome effort. I can't believe I just missed that. But that is a very small margin. Bottas should be safe into Q2 here. and that's going to be, I think, an impeding moment with George Russell, and that's not... Zach Perez's lap has been reinstated since they currently sit in P4, but George Russell could be looking at getting a penalty that they ended up giving to Verstappen. They are going to get some changes. Norris finishes the session, only P9. They are going to get some changes. Norris finishes the session, only P9, despite going purple in that first sector. They've backed off in the final sector, I would suggest, as they were 3 seconds off the pace, more or less. And it's going to be purple in the middle sector for Verstappen. They don't need to push. They know that not enough cars behind them can improve to get themselves up the drop zone, so they should be good. But it is all about Hamilton, Alonso, Doohan and Russell. If they're not careful, could find themselves out of the order. They need to try and improve to make sure they're safe. They've improved in the first sector, not in the middle sector. They've got to work hard. Russell around the final corner. Alonso gets to P15 and pushes Alex Albon, the second Williams, out of Q1. Russell to P9. Hamilton, what lap at the very end there. So a big mistake that prevented them from getting that lap. Maybe the nerves are kicking in as they realise it's their final time here for the Mercedes team, and they really want to perform at their best. But unfortunately, it's got a bit too much. P18. That is such a shame. I'm going to be honest, that is such a shame. Now, it's not over. If Charles Leclerc is to have absolutely terrible qualifying in Q2 and get a grid penalty to start near the back, then Hamilton would get promoted a position, but the chances of that happening with Leclerc and Sainz being currently at the top would be very slim. Norris fastest in the first sector, of course. They didn't need to complete that lap in the end, but Bottas to P2. Brilliant stuff right there. So Hamilton has tried to get out the way of incoming cars, and in turn they've ridden over the bollard. I assume that would be at turns 6 and 7, the chicane, and riding that meant that obviously you don't really get the full performance when your car is slightly lifted off the circuit, and so I don't know if they were able to start a final lap that or not, but I guess it just kind of messed things up big time, and that is such a shame to see the Brit out of their final qualifying session already with Mercedes that they've had so much success over the years with. The most successful driver on this circuit now gives an opportunity for Max Verstappen to have quite a nice matchup to get 5 wins, as well as Hamilton has currently 5 wins. But this time for Max Verstappen, it could be 5 wins in a row, which would be very impressive indeed. That was 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and looking to now make it a 2024 if they could do so. Now we wait for Q2 to come along. We'll be back in a bit. Now, we have had Sergio Perez, of course, getting that lap back, and they were hoping that they had that confirmation a little bit earlier on, because they had to end up going out a bit earlier than they were, or sorry, they had to go out again, which they weren't really wanting to do. Now, they didn't get told that that lap was reinstated until a little bit later on in the session, and that meant that they had to go out again on a fresh set of tyres just in case. They've used that fresh set of tyres. They can definitely use them again in Q2, but it does mean that it's just a little bit of a disadvantage compared to what it should have been before, of course. So, yep. Sergio Perez very frustrated indeed. Nothing they could have really done. They're just going to have to try and focus and continue with this session if they can do so, of course. That is a yellow after we saw Lewis Hamilton, of course, riding over that bollard. So we have had to get a clearance on that, and the session will be slightly delayed. But I think we'll get a green flag very, very soon. So I don't think we're going to need to worry about delaying this too much longer. It's not a barrier build, it is just a bollard need to be removed off the circuit, and I assume they're not going to replace the bollard, or they might do if they have the time to. Alright, so George Russell, Liam Lawson have been involved in an impeding moment. As we realised that Russell was involved in an impeding moment, we get the confirmation that it was Lewis that they were involved, Lawson that they're involved with. That could possibly be a penalty for Russell. Now, it wasn't a prep lap for Lawson. It was a high-speed lap. It was an actual qualifying lap. So instead of a one-place grid penalty as we saw for Max Verstappen last weekend in Qatar, I reckon this is going to be about a 3 to 5 place grid penalty. So expect George Russell to be bumped down 3 positions once the grid has been qualified after Q3. That's suggesting that they actually make it into Q3, of course. We don't quite know if they will do so. Now we've got about 30 seconds to go until we'll get the return to the qualifying session. 15 minutes in Q2. A little bit of a shorter session, a little bit more intense, but there's less cars out on track. So there's less traffic to deal with, and you kind of get that time back effectively from what you would have done, of course, with the 3 minutes that you lose. Now, Leclerc manages to find the pace at the very end. As I said in FP3 earlier on, if you're going to put any money on any driver to set the fastest lap time in any car, it's going to be Charles Leclerc, surely. You've got to bet. And they've managed to do it so far, so good. But that being said, Valtteri Bottas did go and set a brilliant lap time at the end there to bump themselves up the order. And now that kind of means that it's not necessarily taking away from any of the drivers or the Sauber team at all, but it does show that maybe that Sauber that hasn't been so competitive manages to extract their performance, whereas the other cars haven't extracted all their performance just yet. So although the Ferraris are pretty high up at the moment, it could change very, very shortly. The McLarens not exactly doing what they wanted, but they backed off of their laps that they would have been able to improve on. So I think the McLarens can go a lot quicker. Verstappen will be the first one out on track. Now, Max Verstappen wasn't having much fun in FP2 and still having a few issues here and there in FP3 with the understeer of that Red Bull as they try and push that car to the limit. But they do seem to be able to get the car in a good place as they progress throughout the weekend in most races. And it seems to be exactly the same story this time around in Abu Dhabi. And if they could win in Qatar after a terrible sprint race and we thought they'd be nowhere, then who's to say that they can't win Abu Dhabi to finalise an absolutely incredible season for them. And yes, the championship was a bit closer later on, but if you look at the stats, what is that? If they could win tomorrow, that would be 10 victories in a season, I think, if I'm correct in saying. That would be absolutely incredible. So 10 victories in a season isn't that bad. Of course, back in the day, there are less races to go through, so 10 sounds a bit more impressive. But still, regardless, 10 Grand Prix is very impressive to take victory in one season, let alone an entire career for most drivers, let alone one race victory for most drivers in an entire career. They've managed to do 10, which is very impressive. Fernando Alonso is out on track. I don't know why I targeted him. I just saw them move on the board and pick their name out. Everybody is starting to make their way to the exit. Even if they're in the pit lane, they are starting to move as well. Verstappen is coming through the first few corners. Lando Norris will be on the outside on the pit lane exit, but they won't impede them. They should be absolutely fine. They go through 4 and into 5, where they crucially made that overtake on Lewis Hamilton to put them offline as they then went side by side down this straight into turn 6 and 7. And then Max Verstappen was the leader and took that championship in 2021. They've done it a lot earlier this time in this season. They don't have to do it in Abu Dhabi, which would have been absolutely crazy to do once again. They've now got a little bit of a tow from Carlos Sainz ahead, and then they will move past that Ferrari car towards turn 9, the high-speed banked corner, which can be very difficult on the tyres when you're in a race situation. Can be good for overtaking, but you've got to have a lot of overspeed in that car. Otherwise, you're not really going to have a chance at making that move. They come into the hotel section, into 12, and then through 13 and 14 as you go under the tunnel section. And then they go to the final 2 corners. What will Max Verstappen be able to do here in Abu Dhabi in the first lap of Q2? 11 minutes on the clock, and it's going to be a 1 minute 22.998. That is a brilliant lap there. A 22 we have reached from where before with Formula 1 being last year a 23.4 on pole position. A 23.445. And Q2 was a 23.740 also from Verstappen. I'm looking to see if anybody else would have beaten that, but they didn't. And yep, that is very impressive right there from Verstappen to get that 22 second. Now, since the new track was obviously the new changes were made, the times have definitely changed. The lap times have got a lot quicker, so the lap times have improved. And looking at the, I want to have a look at the fastest lap for qualifying. But I don't think we're going to be able to see that, as I can't quite see That's the old circuit layout. The current circuit layout, Max Verstappen at 26.103 in race distance, but we don't get to see qualifying. I'm not going to look for it too hard. I'm just going to let that happen, let it go. And we will continue with this session, as Norris has gone purple in the first and final sector, but still wasn't able to get to Max Verstappen, 1/10 away exactly. Carlos Sainz to P3, and currently basically half and half. Just over half the grid has set laps. I think Leclerc is a little bit frustrated as they've cut turn 14 possibly. That could be possible damage to their car if they're not careful. Fernando Alonso to P8, Lance Stroll P9, and Magnussen down to P10. Piastri goes fastest in the purple, in the first sector, the purple sector. They go fastest. That's Tsunoda to P3. Everyone's mixing their way through the grid. P8 at the 8 minutes on the clock at the moment, but anything can change. Do apologise for the live stream quality. Hopefully everything will be good to go in a few moments' time, and I assume that will be the last of our problems. Max Verstappen still holds that top time, and we will get some improvements as Gasly actually set their first lap time, but they're all the way down in P14 as they weren't able to beat Bottas. That's Piastri up to P3, getting that purple first sector, but didn't quite get there in the others. Originally, Norris set the purple first in the final sector. Obviously, Piastri's taken that away, so Norris will still hold that purple final sector. Whereas Verstappen, I think they must still hold that purple sector in the middle sector, which gained them the most time. And if you look at the gap between Piastri and Verstappen, that's 2/10. Verstappen currently in the form of his life at the moment and is doing a phenomenal job. Deserves everything that they've got right now. They've got one final opportunity here in Abu Dhabi to make it count with the RB20 and finish off a great season. An intense one, that's for sure. And I think they are glad that it will be over because the energy has been depleted as we are already in December of 2024. Lots of people in the pit lane at the moment getting ready for their final laps of the session. No one will be improving for the meanwhile. Just an update. Charles Leclerc needs to try and find themselves further up the field. They need to try and get pole because they will get a 10-place grid penalty. They'll start P11 in the Grand Prix if they do get that P1. It's a big ask for them to try and get positions back so they compete for the Constructors' Championship on Sunday. It's not impossible, especially if you are Charles Leclerc. The McLaren so far have been the quickest cars. They've been expected to be the top of the board in qualifying, but Verstappen has come back once again after a difficult start to the weekend with all of a sudden the fastest possible lap times, and currently sitting on that top spot. It is only Q2 and we've got still plenty of time remaining of the session for everything to mix up, and we've got plenty of time left in the qualifying session overall to see the true pace as we get to Q3. But as the modern Formula 1 cars are so close together on pace, they really should be dialing their cars up to the maximum already, and I assume they are doing so. It is all about driver error from this point onwards. I think that's Perez in the way of Carlos Sainz possibly on their lap. They're trying to have a look at that one. Maybe see if Carlos Sainz can get another car penalty to make their session a bit easier. We're going to get Hulkenberg on pit exit having an incident, failing to follow the white line, I would assume that would be. And Russell and Lawson having their lap times in a Q1 session investigated for impeding, of course. But we'll see. It's going to be... oh, sorry. No further investigation. I completely read that completely wrong. So it will stay as it is. But both cars got themselves into the second part of qualifying. So overall, doesn't matter in the end. I would like to see how that one went, to see if there was an actual impeding moment, because if it was actually impeding and there wasn't a penalty applied, then that would be pretty outrageous considering what we had last weekend, where in my opinion I don't think there should have been a penalty, but hey ho, it happened. Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Gasly, Russell, all the way, all on their way out onto the circuit. We've got Perez doing the same thing. We've got Stroll also as well doing the same thing. A very, very unique pit lane exit here in Abu Dhabi as it goes under the circuit from the right to the left. So the pit lane is currently on the outside of the circuit, but you rejoin the circuit from the pit lane on the inside, which is a very, very peculiar one. You don't see it, I don't think, in any other circuit at all. It does mean that you don't get to see the cars necessarily exit the pit lane if you are watching trackside. You can only see it from the TV camera views, which is a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. You can't do anything about it. Charles Leclerc complaining about something being over the limit. Not entirely sure who they are talking about. But as we see the second stint of laps and the final stint of laps coming around, here goes Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg to give their final campaign here in qualifying 2. Will they get themselves into that Q3 spot? They have no Williams to compete with. They had been competing with Albon and Colapinto to get into Q3 in previous race events. They had been competing with one of the Alpines of Gasly and some of the Racing Bulls as well. So they're not going to have no competition. They're still going to have to push quite hard. So far, so good for Haas. They've been very, very quick, but they've got to go again, and they've got to make it work. Magnussen was very close to his teammate, and sometimes beating his teammate earlier on today, but now everything has come down to crunch time, and we've got Hulkenberg in P6 and Magnussen in P13. They've got to push. They've got to make it count here. They're improving, but they're not setting the world alight according to their teammate, who is still beating them by quite a nice margin as well. That is a massive, massive gap that Hulkenberg has to Magnussen in that middle sector. Magnussen has to find a lot more, but I think it might be a little bit too late. That could be the Dane out of qualifying for their final Grand Prix, quite possibly in Formula 1 forever this time, as they have rejoined the Formula 1 grid for the 3rd time, but this time they will leave. I am quite convinced, unless they do find their way at Andretti. It's P11, and that will be not enough for Kevin Magnussen regardless. Hulkenberg goes and sets a P2 on the other hand, and sets an absolute masterclass lap. We've got Carlos Sainz starting, and we've got Gasly finishing their final lap of the session. What's it going to be? The man who has been in Q3 so many times so far this season has managed to find it again. He is absolutely cooking with no crash damage to their name except from a retirement in Las Vegas. George Russell to P6, Perez to P7. Is that going to be enough to keep them safe? They've got Liam Lawson across the line who will start their final lap of the session. Piastri, Norris will do the same thing, and then we're going to get Valtteri Bottas for the final time, who should get enough time to get one final lap in, but they had a bit of traffic of Norris up ahead. You've got Stroll, who will finish the session, as well as Alonso. What is Aston Martin going to do? They get Stroll into the top 10, but that surely won't be enough, as Charles Leclerc is right there in the Ferrari that should storm through. Purple from the middle sector of Carlos Sainz. Alonso to P6, to push down their teammate. Their teammate will be knocked out of qualifying after all of that. Here goes Charles Leclerc to get themselves into the final part of qualifying. It will be the top of the times for Charles Leclerc. by 200ths of a second in the end. A brilliant, brilliant, brilliant effort there from the Monegasque driver. Carlos Sainz takes a P2 as they go purple in that middle sector. And it looks like the Ferraris maybe have switched something on and made it work ahead of the McLarens after all of that. Sergio Perez, is he going to be knocked out of qualifying here? It's Lawson who could get through. Oh my days. And Charles Leclerc's had their time deleted and will be down at P13. Oh. And Lance Stroll, who gets dropped by Liam Lawson, who doesn't quite get themselves into the top 10. We've got Bottas trying to get themselves into Q3, and they're improving, but will it be enough to get to Yuki Tsunoda here in qualifying? It will! It will! And Sergio Perez is bumped down to P10. Nothing will change, but Valtteri Bottas is in Q3. Absolutely incredible stuff. Wow. And you would not expect this guy to be leaving Formula One after this weekend. That is an incredible performance. An incredible performance. Charles Leclerc, once again, turn one, gets their lap time deleted. And I say once again, it's because we saw that from many cars so far this session. And would you believe it? But exactly what I said. I said it's not over for Lewis Hamilton if Charles Leclerc has a disaster of a qualifying session and ends up near the back of Q2, then Hamilton will get promoted a position. And Hamilton will get promoted a position, as Charles Leclerc will get a 10-place grid penalty and will start the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix at the back of the grid as they try to compete for the Constructors' Championship in the final race of the season. 21 points behind McLaren are Ferrari, and they've currently only got one gunner to really give it a good shot. The benefit they have is that the McLarens haven't been looking as strong as they were in the practice sessions so far in Q1 and Q2, but they still have the cars ahead overall, and the points tally would be enough for them to secure the championship. Valtteri Bottas, though, absolutely incredible stuff. Incredible driving from Valtteri Bottas. It's such a shame to see them out of the sport for next year. They would I'd quite possibly go to a reserve driver role here for Mercedes. And you never know. Maybe one of the Mercedes drivers, not going to name anybody specifically, could have a terrible start to the season and Valtteri Bottas could find himself back in that seat. But you never know. You never know, and I can't jump to conclusions, but wow, to see Bottas back at Mercedes alongside Russell, who replaced Bottas previously after 2021, that would be a fever dream. That would be absolutely incredible. But we could see. We could see. Time will tell of how that one goes. We've got one more qualifying session to go here in Abu Dhabi. Q3 will be on its way very, very shortly, and we will see who will start from pole position tomorrow on Sunday. Verstappen and Carlos Sainz currently are at the top of the times. Hülkenberg isn't far away. No one's really that far away, to be honest. All of the top 10 are incredibly close. Even P11 of Tsunoda and Lawson, who both got knocked out of the session, were very close as well. Yuki Tsunoda a bit confused after the qualifying 2 session, not able to get themselves into the next part as they're just under half a tenth away from the sister team car of Sergio Perez in P10 and getting themselves into the next session as they join their teammate Liam Lawson with P12 just behind them. Stroll was knocked out along with Leclerc and Magnussen. And the questions are currently being asked for Charles Leclerc. Do they start at the back of the pack on the grid and be nice and close to everyone, or do they start from the pit lane? They can have setup changes, of course, if they do so, and then they could maybe have a bit of a better race car. That could be very possible, and I reckon that would probably be their best bet. They're going to go for that risk, and that will also mean that on lap 1, they're much less likely to be involved in an incident. I think that is a very, very good opportunity, and you never know. What if Carlos Sainz gets pole position and can back up the entire grid? That would be incredible. But to back up an entire Formula 1 grid to allow Leclerc to catch up would be very, very difficult. It would also, of course, bring everybody into double DRS and maybe make it a bit more difficult. So Charles Leclerc is probably hoping for more of a spread out field so they can make overtakes. Not so spread out, but a little bit spread out so they can have a go at making clean overtakes even with DRS. We're waiting for the final part of qualifying. 12 minutes put on the clock for this final session, for the final qualifying session of 2024. And that gives me a little bit of a pumping heart, because that's very, very, very... It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to see the final qualifying session and the final race weekend of 2024 come around. It's very surreal. One of the longest calendars we've ever had in Formula 1 has already come to an end. But you know what? The next 2 years of Formula 1 are set to be awesome. I cannot wait for that. I cannot wait. It's going to be a good one. Alrighty, waiting for that green flag. I don't think we should get any delays. We should be absolutely fine. We're just waiting for that confirmation. 30 seconds is us being told through Hülkenberg's radio. And everybody is queuing up at the exit of the pit lane, and Hülkenberg does go out. Not quite 30 seconds, I read that a little bit wrong, but there you go. We are out and we are ready. Let's get it. Hülkenberg will be the first one, then Russell, then Perez, then Verstappen, and then Carlos Sainz. This is going to be an absolute masterclass of a qualifying session. However, we haven't got the master of qualifying with us. He is down in P14 and will be starting last in the Grand Prix tomorrow. They know these cars like the back of their hands and the inside of their helmets. It's a bit weird. This is their final opportunity to make it count with the machinery that they do know very well now. Whether they like it or not, that's a different story. That being said, of course, a Formula 1 car is effectively a prototype pretty much all the time, except from these final few races where you don't really see too many upgrades. But we'll see how it goes. Charles Leclerc is going to be looking to try and race a bit of a different car tomorrow, I would assume, unless they really do try and start on the grid with no setup changes. But I believe they are running high downforce, which will help them in the qualifying order. And that is for good reason, because generally qualifying is super important around Abu Dhabi, so you want to try and start as high as possible. So far so good, at least lap time wise, but with the track extension it put them down the order. Now if you want to have an overtaking car, a race car, you want to lower those wings a little bit. It does make it easier on the straight if you're able to have a confidence advantage in the corners, of course. There's a lot more detail involved to that. I'm not going to go through it because I don't exactly know the technical terms, so I'm not going to make myself sound like an idiot. But yeah, it is what it is. Hungary, Hülkenberg, is going to be setting their lap as they go through the first sector, first of all, and it's purple. Of course it's purple. Why would it not be purple? And I'll quickly remind you of the qualifying time last season, a 23.445 for Max Verstappen. We've already demolished that lap time in Q2, and we're looking to go even further as we get to this final stage. That was Max Verstappen on pole, that was Charles Leclerc in P2, that was Oscar Piastri in P3, George Russell P4, and Lando Norris in P5. What will they be able to do? Will Lando Norris be able to give themselves the best chance of securing that P2 in the championship? Well, currently looks pretty good because Charles Leclerc is all the way at the back of the pack. That's where they'll start the grid, at least for tomorrow's race. Hulkenberg's purple initially in that first sector, but Verstappen's taken it away immediately, as they're actually 2 tenths ahead of Carlos Sainz, and Hulkenberg actually beat Carlos Sainz's first sector. So Carlos Sainz not having the best of laps here. Hulkenberg crosses the line for the final time of this, at least, stint, and they will go to P1 for now. Verstappen is set to take that away. George Russell will be first to cross the line behind them, but 2 tenths behind. Not ideal. Perez across the line in the Red Bull. What's it going to be? P2. Hulkenberg is really having a good day today. How about that? But Verstappen is going to make that good day a bad day, I'm sure. Here we go. Absolutely incredible. Verstappen actually lost the car on the final corner, it seems, but he's still gone fastest. A 30.1 in the final sector. A 30.1 for Carlos Sainz in the final sector. It was about half a tenth faster, but not enough to get anywhere near Max Verstappen, who managed to absolutely fly there in the middle sector compared to anyone else. Absolutely brilliant stuff there from the Dutchman. I did not expect that. That's a little bit weird. Very well done indeed, right there from Max Verstappen to make that work. Piastri still not able to get near Verstappen. Is anyone on the grid at the moment? A purple first and final sector for Piastri, but no one can match in that middle sector. We're going to get Norris getting purple in that final sector to take away from his teammate and getting incredibly close, but he's got lap time deleted. Has Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris so close to the back of Verstappen after Verstappen made that mistake, of course, but that just suggests that that Red Bull's got a little bit more performance in that car to bring, and they're going to be able to go even quicker and quite possibly compete for this pole position. Will Carlos Sainz be able to find that extra bit of performance that they found in the Q2 session and bring it to the front of the pack? I don't quite know, but Oscar Piastri, once again, as we saw in Qatar in sprint qualifying, is going to have to find a little bit more at the very end of the session to get at least one lap in, as they've had their lap time deleted again. Six minutes on the clock to conclude the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix qualifying session. Verstappen tops the times, Norris in P2 and Carlos Sainz in P3. Hulkenberg absolutely flying in P4. Gasly once again into Q3, currently sitting P5. Alonso P6. Perez and then Russell at the back of the pack, with Piastri not setting a valid lap time and Bottas not setting a lap time at all just yet. Now, I say that Piastri did, of course, set their lap time, but they did go invalid, as they must have extended, I assume, at turn 1 it would have been, and it was at turn 1. So, again, more issues for many drivers, but now they all wait for this final opportunity. There's going to be no risks on track limits for Oscar Piastri. He's going to be abiding by that. Everybody will get one final opportunity. They're all waiting, although Perez is actually going quite early, which is an interesting one. Whether they're looking to go for 2 runs on the same tyre or go for maybe a run initially, and if they feel the lap is good, they'll complete it. If they don't feel it's good, they'll go back into the pit lane. It's an interesting time to come out on the out on track. I don't think you'd have enough time to go in and come out again, although it may not be too impossible. It would be very tough. The eventual pole sitter of the Qatar Grand Prix and the pole sitter and race winner of the Las Vegas Grand Prix. P8 at the moment, 7 tenths away from Max Verstappen, only a couple of milliseconds away from Perez, Verstappen's teammate, but still not an ideal situation for both drivers to be in, this far away from their teammate. Of course, he is exceptional. You shouldn't really be looking to be that far away, of course, even if they are the best in the world. You should be pretty close to the best in the world, if not the best in the world as well, as you're all in Formula 1. They've got a bit more time to find. Perez comes around the final few corners and will get ready to start what is likely to be their final stint, at least in qualifying here. Bottas currently out on track for the final time here. Hülkenberg out on track for the final time with his Haas team. Gasly, Piastri, Carlos Sainz. It's actually Lando Norris right behind as Alonso is bunched up in the pit lane, maybe trying to find a bit of space, as they can do so on pit lane exit. But they can't do when they're out on track because there is a minimal delta time. So they are currently bunching up to try and go against that, of course. Perez P5, tab 5, exiting, and they are currently improving on their first sector, a 17.0. No one reaching the 16s at this point in the session. They need to find a bit more if they do want to improve further up the order in that middle sector. Verstappen being the pace setter for that middle sector, an absolute monster of a sector they set earlier on. Sergio Perez coming into turn 9, a 35.9. It is a very good lap for Perez here, but it does mean that others will be improving as well. With the track evolution, Perez has got Gasly up ahead. Gasly shouldn't need to worry about impeding Perez as they move out the way nicely on the exit. Turn 15 into 16 and out the final corner for the Mexican driver for the final time this year, quite possibly P4. For Sergio Perez, 3 tenths away from his teammate in pole position. That could well be qualifying over for Perez. I don't think they'll be going again. The time left on the clock is going to be virtually nothing. That is going to be the next cars out on track, Hülkenberg and Bottas, to go for an improvement here, as Hülkenberg is heading on their way to the second sector. Bottas has currently crossed that second sector line, 35.902. They are improving. I say they're improving. They haven't set a lap so far this session, so of course they're going to be going green. Where will they come out according to everybody else on track, though, or on the grid? I don't quite know. Here we go. Purple middle sector for Nico Hülkenberg. They beat Max Verstappen's middle sector that was a monster earlier on, a 35.718. That is a massive gap ahead of Valtteri Bottas, who still goes P5 for now, and they beat Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez is going to start behind the Sauber in Abu Dhabi. Absolutely incredible. Hülkenberg rounds the final corner here in Yas Marina. It's going to be provisional pole position for Nico Hülkenberg. Half a tenth in it. Will anybody else be able to have an answer? I think so, but still, right now, that is awesome. Absolutely awesome. Piastri's time was reinstated. We've just got a brilliant, brilliant lap right there. Gasly improves, Bottas improves, but it's not going to be enough for Gasly. Piastri takes it away by almost a tenth of a second ahead of Hülkenberg. He takes away the party celebrations. It's not going to work out. Perez goes around the final corner and into the pit lane. Alonso will go around the final corner to improve ahead of Valtteri Bottas. And that is a brilliant, brilliant effort right there for them. That is Alonso out. That is Carlos Sainz to P2 as they just missed out on Piastri. Lando Norris is on pole position by 2/10. Max Verstappen, are they improving? They're not improving. They are not improving. And it's by a bit of a margin as well. Unless they can find a little bit more performance in this final sector, I think it could be it. Russell does not get ahead of Pierre Gasly. P7 for George Russell. Max Verstappen across the line. What's it going to be? It's an improvement in the final sector, but it is not enough. And Lando Norris is on pole position for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. A brilliant, brilliant, brilliant drive there from them at the end. Piastri to P2. They make it work just ahead of Carlos Sainz. And then Nico Hülkenberg in his best ever qualifying position for Haas, and I think quite possibly, no, not possibly ever, because he qualified pole position back in Brazil in Williams. That is his best ever qualifying position in a Haas. Very, very well done. Wow, incredible stuff. But it's a front row lockout for McLaren when they need it most. They do have a hungry Ferrari right behind them though, and they're raring to go. Incredible stuff here in Abu Dhabi. We've got Lando Norris on pole. We've got Piastri, Sainz, Hülkenberg, Verstappen, Gasly, Russell, Alonso, Bottas and Perez at the back of the pack. Perez not able to find any more performance. Bottas was able to beat the Mexican driver in a Sauber car compared to the Red Bull that has won so many races this season so far. P9 for Valtteri Bottas, which is an absolutely awesome effort. Alonso quite close behind George Russell, but a little bit away is George Russell from Pierre Gasly, who did another phenomenal performance, but just got outperformed by Nico Hülkenberg, who did a masterclass right there. 3.5 tenths away from Lando Norris is Max Verstappen, who has got directly behind him for tomorrow's race, George Russell on the starting grid. That is going to be a little bit tasty. They're not alongside each other on the starting grid, but they are directly in line with one another. Whether they will sort themselves out on track or not, I don't quite know. But Lando Norris, I can confirm, is on pole position. Who do I think will win the Grand Prix tomorrow, Sunday? Let's have a prediction. I think it's going to be Carlos Sainz. I think it's going to be Lando Norris, and I think it's going to be Oscar Piastri. I think... No, you know what? It's going to be Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, and then Oscar Piastri will jump out there. Charles Leclerc will finish around about P6, P7 if they can do so. I think that Ferrari has enough pace in that car to get through the order, but it won't be able to get any further up unless the safety car comes along and mixes things up. And of course, the spectacle of racing and timing-wise, I hope there isn't a safety car for these guys, but looking at the championship battle, I hope there is a safety car to bring everything together. But we'll see how that goes tomorrow. We'll see you then. Well, we won't see you then. We'll wish you all the best and hope that whoever you want to win wins the championship tomorrow or wins the Grand Prix tomorrow. It's been a pleasure. We will see you in 2025. We'll actually see you later on for the LSI F1.5 EU Championship around Hungary. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.